Okay, great. So welcome to our first Tableau for Data Journalism class. I'm really excited to have you guys all here, and for anyone who's going to be watching the recording later, very excited to have you guys in class too. And I really appreciate how eager you all were to learn about Tableau. And we've been talking about doing a class like this for a couple months now, and I just kind of decided, let's just do it and see what happens. So it's a little, I'm by no means a professional teacher, so it's going to be a little rough probably, and I really appreciate you guys kind of jumping in on this experiment with me. I really hope that you can learn a lot, and that hopefully this goes well and we can hold more classes like this and really get a lot of people interested in data journalism. So today's first lecture is just going to be about basic Tableau proficiency, and I know a lot of you came to this course through either NICAR training or something else like that, and have some basic Tableau experience. So this will mostly be review for you probably. But before we get started with that, I wanted to do a little bit of class housekeeping just to make sure we're all on the same page with how the class is going to operate. So first thing is that most of the class is being run through Reddit. I just wanted a way to have, a discussion board like system, but that you can also send links really easily and kind of do all that kind of stuff. So that's why I chose Reddit here. So I just wanted to give you guys a little briefing on how Reddit works, just in case we have some new users here. So the Tableau for Data Journalism subreddit is actually locked down, so no one else can go in here except for people who are registered in the class. So if you're worried about, we will be working on assignments and maybe you want to work on things and get opinions on stories you're working on, but you don't want it to be, out in the wild. Don't worry about it too much about posting it on here because it's locked down and only your other classmates will get to see this stuff. So if you haven't already gone to the Introduce Yourself thread, please do, and thank you for everyone who already introduced themselves. I'm really excited about what a diverse group we've got here, kind of all levels of journalists from all over the world. So it's pretty cool. And for those of you who don't know, just giving you a little bit of a tutorial here on Reddit. So any of these, if you decide that you have a comment to make, you can always hit reply and it'll thread down. So I encourage you guys to interact with each other and have conversations with each other, because what you'll find when you're working, the more you kind of start working with Tableau, you'll find that community is a big aspect of it. One thing that we like to do on our team is just make sure that whenever we publish anything, we don't do it without someone else looking at it and giving you, what they thought they would do, and giving you some feedback. It's really a kind of a crucial part of the whole process. So I encourage you to, make friends in the community and become active. The Tableau is really active on Twitter, so following people on there. There's also, we have our own, like, all Tableau subreddit. So that's just our Tableau here. And that's a good place too to go ask questions and get to know people a little bit better, share your stories. You'll also notice on Reddit, if someone does reply to something you said, this little envelope will turn orange here. That's why kind of orange, because it's actually done. But when you see that, that means someone replied to you. So open it up. Everyone likes getting mail. So that's how Reddit works. I'm going to, so you can make your own posts on here. Anyone's welcome to post anything they want. I'm not going to stop you from starting your own thread. So if you want to start your own discussion, you can do that. There's two kinds of posts. There's a link post. So if you're trying to share a web page, do that. There's a text post. So if you want to do kind of like what I did here and write a little text bubble, that's how you do that with a new text post. And yeah, so when it's time to submit assignments, I'll make a new thread like this for your assignment. I'll have the data, a link to the data to use in there, and then you can all just submit your assignments in like the comments. And I encourage you to look at each other's and make sure that, you know, get inspired by each other and really give each other feedback. So, okay, all I have to say about that. A little more on the assignments. So as I mentioned, I will have data to provide you that I know will work for the assignment. But if you want to use your own data and say you want to work on something that you can actually use in your publication, that's great. Totally encourage that. I can give you some guidelines as far as what you can do, like what kind of columns your data needs in order to do the assignment. Like the first assignment, you could really do pretty much with any data you want. So totally cool to bring your own data. If not, I'll always provide some data for you. And either way, whether you're using the data I give you or data that you brought yourself, always feel free to publish your stuff wherever you want. You know, it's all totally yours. And I encourage you to post in your publication, post on your blog, share it on Twitter, whatever you want to do. Totally encourage that. So, other housekeeping things for the class. I know a lot of you are probably IRE members and have a license for desktop, and that's great. It's not necessary for this class. You could totally do this class just with public. So if you don't have desktop yet, don't sweat it. Public will totally set it for this. The only real difference between desktop and public, you guys, is really about saving, because desktop you can save locally and public you can't. So I wanted to show you when you do save on public, it creates this public profile for you, and I encourage you to all sign into Tableau Public and edit your profile, you know, make sure you have a picture up there and your little about me section and links to whatever. So whenever you publish something, it'll go on your profile. So if you want to make sure that it's kind of hidden and people don't see your work in progress right away, all you have to do is sign in here. So I'm going to sign in. And you can click on this Edit Profile button. You can see that I have a bunch here that are hidden. You just check this box to say visible or not visible to others. And that effectively hides it from Tableau Public. People could still navigate to it if they had the direct link to it, but that's going to be pretty hard for people that come up with on their own unless you send it to them. So this is just a good thing to do if you're publishing Tableau Public and you're not ready for people to find it yet. It's a good way to do it. So let's get started actually with Tableau. So today we are going to look at just some Tableau basics, just how to make all the different chart types, what all kind of the language of Tableau. And the data we're going to use is from the World Bank. If you don't know World Bank, they have just the most ridiculous amount of data available for you. So we're going to use them a lot for this class, because they have data in pretty much every kind of area you can imagine. So today we're actually going to use all these environmental data points. They have it for every country, and depending on what the measure is, different years. So I have compiled all this environmental data into one spreadsheet. You can see here. You can see we have all these different countries for all these different years. And then we have all of our different measures here. The agriculture emissions, CO2 emissions, how much forest they have, their biodiversity, what animals are endangered, lots of different information here. You can see there's a lot of blank cells because, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of record keeping in Aruba prior to 1985, apparently. And depending on the measure, some of them are collected for some years, not others. You know, maybe some are collected every 5 years, or collected every 10 years. So there's not all of them have every year. That doesn't matter. So I'm going to make this data available online on the Reddit. And you can use this for your first assignment, or you can bring whatever data you want. For this one, there's really not a whole lot of requirements for your first assignment. Okay, so opening up this data in Tableau Public. Close this so we can kind of see what's in scratch again. So when you open Tableau Public, this is the screen you see. So anything you were working on in Tableau Public before, shown up here. Then down here we have this is a day and a training section and all that kind of stuff. You open the data here. My data is currently in an Excel file, so that's what I'm going to click. And it's called World-Based Environment. I'll open that up. Okay. So when I opened it up, it actually gave me some problems because all of these things, access to electricity, agricultural emissions, all these things, for some reason it thought it was a string instead of a number. Probably just the way it's formatted in Excel is making it think that. You can see these are very obviously numbers, but it thinks that it's text, so we got to fix that. Pretty easy to fix. Whenever you have a variable that was kind of assigned wrong in Tableau, all you have to do is right click and say change data type, and you can change it to a number. And I can actually, if you, this is a tip that a lot of people don't really realize about Tableau, but if you hold down Control while you click things, you can select multiple things. And I can actually change all of these into number at the same time, so that's what I'm going to do here. Sometimes data cleanup and that kind of stuff is really the hardest part of this whole thing. So now I'm going to change those things to numbers. Cool. And then I'm also going to change these to measures. And I'll tell you why I'm doing that in a second once I'm done. All right. Okay. So our data is divided into dimensions and measures. Yeah, once you understand what these things are, you'll understand why I had to move all of these things down here. So when you're talking about data, there's really two main kinds of data. There's qualitative data and quantitative data. Qualitative data are categories, ways of describing data points. So country, that's a category, or region, that's a category. Quantitative data are things that are numerical, things that you're going to want to do math on. So anytime you want to know the average of a measure, it's going to be a measure, not a dimension. You can't take the average of a country. You can take the average of something like energy use. So, what we're talking about, so when we're talking about data, those are really the two kinds. And quantitative data or qualitative data is actually split into two different types of qualitative data. There is nominal or categorical. So those are things that don't really have any particular order to them. So places or names or products. Those are all nominal qualitative data. And then there's ordinal qualitative data. So that's when you have these categorical buckets, but there is some kind of hierarchy into what you like, into how you arrange them. So like gold, silver, and bronze, those are all categories, but you know that gold is more something than bronze, or excellent health, good health, poor health. You know that excellent health is more something than poor health. So that would be an ordinal qualitative data. And then quantitative data are numbers, so things like weight, cost, percent discounts, things like that. And when you're working in Tableau, or really data visualization in general, when we're talking about best practices for these different kinds of data, there are different ways that people like this kind of data. So quantitative data, things that are numbers, we like to see on position. So where is it in an XY? You can tell that that is more something than that. Or length. So if you see something longer, you know that it's more something. Size, that's another one. Color intensity, so if something's a darker green instead of a lighter green. Ordinal, kind of some of the same ones for ordinal data. Position, so if you're going to be talking about gold, silver, and bronze medals, you probably want to order them in gold, silver, and bronze. If you put like bronze, gold, and then silver, people would be really confused. Size would make a difference in ordinal data too. And color intensity, again, because it is kind of just one scale. There's categorical, so grouping things into different positions, that will help you see different categories, definitely. Shape is a really good way of seeing different categories. And different colors, so not, instead of saying like a light green, a medium green, and a dark green for categorical data, that could be confusing just because it makes you think that one thing is more something than another. So instead, you should use, green, purple, and yellow, or something like that. And in general, position is the best way for people to tell things, and then color. Shape is kind of harder to read. And there are some particular kinds of data that you can just always do for best practices, like time should always go along the x-axis. And location usually works well on a map. If you're comparing things, bar charts work. If you're exploring relationships, so what's the difference between X versus Y, a scatter plot works well. So this is just a little bit of a kind of best practices interlude. Back to Tableau. So the first thing Tableau did was divide our data into dimensions and measures. It also gave our data different data types. So that's why we have all these symbols next to our different groups here. So anything with a little number sign, that's a number. Anything with an ABC, that's kind of a text field. So if we drag that out here, you can see that's all the text categories. And then we have a special one here, which is our little globe, and that means that Tableau knows that this is a place. So if we were to grab these out here, you can see these are places. And Tableau has a number of built-in places. You can find them by if you hover over one of these hills and click the drop-down menu. You can go down to geographic role, and these are all of the different geographic roles that are available. And if Tableau doesn't automatically recognize that this is a geographic role, you can come in here and make it one manually. So it correctly assigns this as country, probably because I called this country. But we can also do area codes or MSA, so that's metropolitan statistical areas. That's something they use in the census tract. City, congressional district, just for the U.S. Cities, I believe, any city over 10,000 people can usually be that. County, state, or province, zip code, postcode. And there are ways to get other kinds of data in here. Tableau mapping.bi is a really good resource for that. It's just a group of really nice Tableau users that have provided tools for getting other kinds of geographic data into your visit. So you might notice that year here is a number, but we kept it in dimensions instead of measures. Now, why did we do that? I thought that measures are all numbers in that dimensions are like categories. Well, that's true. In year, it's both a number and a category. Because year is not something we're going to want to do math on. Even though it's a number, we're not going to want to average the year. We don't want to say like, okay, well, the country, by the country, what's the average year? That doesn't make any sense. Or we're not going to put some the years. So year is really working more like a category here. So even though it's numbers, that's why it's a dimension. Another thing you might notice about dimensions and measures and just Tableau variables in general is that some of them are blue and some of them are green. And the reason for this is that green things are things that are continuous. So if I were to grab a green thing here, put it on rows, and grab another green thing here, put it on columns, and let's add here. Continuous means that it can go anywhere in between these ticks. It's not just on specific ticks. I could change it to a discrete, which would make this turn blue, as you can see. And now instead of being a continuous line, what we have is it has to be on one of the ticks. Doesn't really make sense for this one to be discrete. But a good example of something that can kind of go back and forth between being discrete and being continuous is here. So we put year down here. Right now it's green, that means it's continuous. Let's try putting energy use over here. So it's giving us for each year what's the energy use. Now, if I change this instead of being continuous, I change it to discrete. Now you can see things the way it looks. So it's just depending on what kind of graph you're making. When you're making something that you want to be more like a stack of things or a bar chart, so this would work better with bars than the other one. When it's bars, discrete works better. I want to turn this into continuous, then it becomes like a weird chunk. But continuous is better for things like lines. So that's a little intro to dimensions and measures. Again, if you have any questions as we go along, either press the little raise your hand button on the participants panel, or you can type in a question to the chat box or the Q&A box. I'll try to monitor it as I go along. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about part types and what you can make in Tableau. So, when you're first getting started, and when you are looking at a monstrous set of data like this, where you have a lot of stuff in here, and you don't necessarily know what's in here, what's interesting, what you want to see, a good place to start is in here in Show Me. So I got here by just in the corner up here, little inbox here. And what Show Me is really kind of a helper tool to help you figure out what you need to make a different kind of graph. So any of these graph types, you can hover over them and it will tell you what you need. So say I wanted horizontal bar chart, it says, well, you're going to need 0 or more dimensions and you're going to do the measuring. Okay? So maybe I can take a dimension like country name, and I can take a measure like energy use. And if I hold control when I select both of those, now you can see that it has darkened, and that means I can make it. And a number of other things darken too. So I could also make simple maps or pie charts or tree maps. These are all the different things I can make with what I have selected. And you can see there's a blue box around simple maps with like, you know, you're using countries. I really think you should make a map. So I can click these, see what happens. And we can use this to switch between different views too. See what all these look like. That looks cool. Maybe I decide that the bar chart is what I want. We can sort using these buttons up here. Now, it looks like a lot of my countries here are not actually countries. There's other groups. That's kind of confusing. So if I wanted to get rid of those, what I could do is move a filter. So if I take country name here, put it on filter, I can go through here and pick out things that aren't actually countries. Another easy way for me to do this, I set this to a map. The things that aren't actually countries are not going to map very well. So that's why I have this little box here. It says 2000 unknown. If I click that, it gives me some options. I can edit the location or filter the data. So if I want to see, like, what are these values that they don't know the location for, I can say edit. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense because these are not actual countries. And it looks like all of these unrecognized ones are just groups that aren't actually countries. And hit OK. I don't have any corrections with that. I'm just going to filter all that out. Now let me switch to see new things. Now we have just the countries. So it looks like energy use, yeah, United States is pretty dominant there. But this is, of course, we're looking at the sum of all years. So if we wanted to look at a particular year, we can take years and drag it onto pages over here. And we can go through, see how energy use has changed. It looks like China wasn't even measuring it, so that's why they're already a little behind. And faucet grow over time. We don't have any measures for 2000. All right. So show me is really useful for kind of taking these things and now it's doing some different things because I also year in there now. So let's graph this. Let's say we don't necessarily want to start them. I want to make a bar graph, but we do know I want to make something that shows threatened fish species and place. So I'm going to select fish species threatened, and I'm going to select the country name. And if I look at Toby, it's saying, well, these are the things you can make with those kinds of data. Just make a table, and just see the number of how many fish species are threatened in a place. Map. And so then I need to filter out all of those places that aren't actually countries. And I could even select more things than that. I could say, what if I wanted to see fish species that are threatened in a place and what year? Then we can do stuff like the area type. Maybe not. Giving us lots of different options to do. Now I'm just going to so as you can see, lots of different ways you can use Show Me there to kind of help us get started. When you're doing data discovery is what we like to call this stage. When you have a big data set, you don't necessarily know what's in here. Sometimes just taking things and just seeing what they are, following your intuition, is a good way to do it. So maybe I want to see a table that looks at country names. And what are some interesting things I could do with this? Maybe, just liking where we were going with the fish species that are threatened. You can also look at threatened mammals. Maybe look at threatened plants. Ecuador has a lot of threatened plants. A fair amount of other things. Everything. Yeah, there we go. So now we can see things like Australia, lots of threatened fish, not a lot of threatened plants. Not a big surprise there. Like a big portion of this desert. There's almost a lot of threatened everything. More mammals, more places. And I can sort these too if I wanted to say, well, who has the most threatened fish? That's what the United States does. The most threatened mammals, that would be Indonesia. And who has the most threatened plants? That would be Ecuador. I could also do things like this. Maybe I wanted to see this, add up all of these measures and see what happens. So there's things I can do like that. Maybe I want to see this as a stack bar. The way you would do that, so this is kind of a feature that isn't super obvious, but once you learn how to use it, it's very, very useful. You'll notice that we have some of these things that are italicized. Those are things that Tableau automatically sees. So the latitude and longitude that's generated, that's made by these country codes here. Number of records is just a way of counting how many rows you have in your data. So if we were to do that here, we have 13,000 rows of data in our data set. That's the number of records. And measure values and measure means something a little special. So I'm going to show you what that looks like here. You take measure values and drag it out here. You'll see that it puts everything in measures in here. Now, I don't necessarily want everything in measures, so I can just drag out the ones I don't want. So if all I want to see is fish species that are threatened and the mammal species that are threatened and the plant species, that's what that is. And now I can do that by country. Take the world out here. So now I can sort by all three of these things added up. And I can do something like take the measure names, which is going to be the names of these three values here, and put that on color. And that's how I can make a stack bar chart out of different measures. So that's something you'll have to do a lot of times. I get a lot of questions about how do I make a stack bar chart when I have three different columns and I want all of them to stack together. That's how you do it. Measure values, measure names. So when we add it all up, it looks like Ecuador has the most endangered everything added up together. And the main reason for that is a lot of threatened plant species. You can see that. Now this might be interesting to see in more of a map style. So let's see if we wanted to make a map. Whenever you're making a map, if you have geographic roles, just double clicking on them will automatically make a map. So that's cool. Now maybe I want to take those measure values and put that on color. I'm going to take all the ones that stopped before. Map. You could do something else, like maybe instead of a build map like that, I want to make something else. Like, what if I wanted pie charts on top of all of these pencils? The way to do that is with this thing called the mark chart. So this is probably one of the most powerful tools you have in your toolbox when you're using Tableau. The mark chart automatically will assign, what it thinks is the best way to display this data. So in this instance, it decided that a build map is best. But I can force it to do whatever I want. So if I wanted to do this as a pie chart, I could do pies here. And I could make measure values from the angle, and I could make the measure names from the color. Now you can see we have a little pie here showing what's endangered in each country. I could also add something to size. Say I want to add that measure value in size as well. Now you can really see Ecuador over here, and that it's mostly green because of all the threatened species. So when you're working with a mark card, there are a number of different things you have here to work with. You have color, you have size, you have label, detail, and tooltip. Those are always here. This 6 button can kind of change depending on what you're looking at. So when you're looking at pie charts, angle, that's determining what size, what slice of the pie, what actually assigns that. In some ways, sometimes if you do space is another button you can have. So that just depends on what kind of mark you're using. So let's just go down the line and kind of look at the mark chart and what we can do with it. So since we're here on pies, work with that here. So the first thing we have is the color button. There are a couple different options we have on the color button here. We can make these things more transparent. So you can see we have a lot of overlapping ones. So maybe we want to use those underneath them. Making them transparent is a good way to do that. Maybe I decide I don't like this whole blue, green, and orange thing. So I can say edit colors, and then I can pick whatever colors I want. So Tableau has a bunch of built-in color schemes. So that goes from here to here are all built-in ones. And you can add in your own custom ones if you want. So I have a bunch of custom ones because I am a color fanatic. And I can show you guys how to do that. I'll post something on the Reddit on how to do that. So let's start just with the Tableau 10. Maybe I decide plant species being green, that makes sense. Fish species being blue, but orange for mammals, let's actually think that's brown. And I can see these are all brown. So the next button we have here is size. So the way these buttons work is they're not only buttons that you can click on, they're also places that are like cells that you can drop cells onto. So somehow in the making of this, I lost my size. That determines how big these pie charts are going to be. So if I want to make these pie charts as big as the sum of all of these measure values, I'm just going to take measure values and put it on size again. There we go. Now when I click size, what comes up is this little slider, and this determines how big I want these pie charts to be. I'm going to make them really, really big. That's pretty impossible to read. Having them a little bigger definitely makes it easier to read. Making them easier to read. Back on colors here, you can also add borders. So if we wanted to be able to see what's going on a little better here, maybe a black border would help, making it a little transparent so you can see behind them. There we go. The label, that'll put some text on what you're looking at. So maybe I want to put something like label. No, that doesn't look very good. But anyway, that's what label does. It labels things. And you can basically drag anything you want on the label. Level of detail is something I'll get into more when we're talking about data structuring. So let's just put that one for now. Then tooltip. This one is really important and often overlooked. Tooltip is what shows up when you hover over something like this. And you can edit what's in that text box really easily. You just click tooltip, and you have this text editor, and you can make this thing as much or as little as you want. So this is, and we'll go over this a little more when we talk about storytelling, But this is a really good way to make your visits look more polished and to make them a lot more interactive. Maybe I'm going to say something like, all right, moving on from this map. Oh, I got a question here. What's the difference between pages and filters? So a filter means you want to take that data out of the equation completely. So if I were to, let's do energy use again, by country. So if I wanted to not have these things in here, but I wanted to keep some of the other things, like I want to be able to compare the United States with China and all those other countries, but I don't want these things that aren't actually countries in here. I would use a filter to take those away. So with all those, now those are filtered out. So that's why we have a filter that says country names. Now, if I wanted to not necessarily not see all the years, but just see them one at a time, I would use pages so that I could slide through and watch these grow and see them one at a time. But that doesn't mean I'm taking the data out completely, and I can't see multiple years at a time using pages. That's the difference between a page and a filter. In general, pages are something that you won't use very often. Maybe you'll use them for things like here when you're looking at time series. That's really one of the more useful times to use them. But filters you'll find yourself using all the time. All right. So let's see. We've kind of gone over show me and mark cards here. So let's just put together a few sheets and talk about creating a dashboard. So I'm going to keep building off of this idea of endangered species over here. I like that one. So we have our map, and maybe I want to also look at some things like how much forest area is in a place. So I can make a map here. I can say forest area, and it automatically made dots, but maybe I want this to be a filled map. So I'm going to go to the mark card, and I'm going to change this to a filled map. And what did it do? You can see that right here, it's the forest area, and that symbol, see how it matches that one? That means it's on size. Well, that doesn't make sense if I'm making a filled map that's determined by size. That's not actually going to do anything. So I'm going to drag this into on color instead. I'm going to filter out these. There we go. Lots of forest area here in Russia. Not really surprising. And what if we made this look at, instead of by this area, really all we're seeing is bigger spaces or darker. Let's do it as a percentage of the area. Another way I have it. So I'm just going to replace that here. And that lightened it up a little. You can see that actually isn't in Norway. Suriname, these are very foresty areas. And once again, we could put year on pages just so that we can see individual years at a time. And it looks like there's a lot of years that don't actually have any data. Let's see when we type in data here. There we go. And maybe we decided, well, I don't really want another map, so let's change this. Let's just see it as departure. Let's put your instances again. Cool. Now we can do some other things here too. Let's say we want to see just one region at a time. We can take region and make what's called a quick filter. So if we click on this little drop down here and make a quick filter, we have some some of these, and we're going to make radio buttons. Let's click through all of these. Oh, got another question here. Got a question that says, can you animate the time series? So you'll notice there are these little play buttons down here, and that makes this time series animate. That only really works while you're in the product. When you publish the Tableau public, these play controls won't be there anymore. Because when you publish the Tableau public, every time you change the years, it's going to send that query back to the database and then come back and serve you up the new view. So it's not really able to be animated in that mode. Okay, so let's say we've got everything we want to put on a sheet. So now we want to bring it all together into a dashboard. We're going to make a new dashboard, in dashboard, new dashboard, and all my sheets that are here I can drag in. The first thing you should always do when you're making a new dashboard is determine how big it's going to be. So this is going to be based on where you're publishing it or how much stuff you want to put on it. If you know that your newspaper has a column width of maybe 600 for articles, you're not going to want to make it bigger than 600. So right now it's set at range. I don't recommend doing that. I would recommend saying exactly and saying exactly how big you want it. So I think like 650 by 700, that's probably about it. So you can see there's this white area, and that's my canvas. That's really where my dashboard's going to go. And there's a gray area. That's where stuff isn't going to go. And I can just start dragging sheets in here. I don't really remember which one's which, so bear with me here. Maybe I want. Oops. Well, that's not good. That's twice in a row now that it's not something, and that's happened. Okay, I'll open up a different example that's already made. Here's an example I'm working on of a dashboard. So when you're working on a dashboard, typically you can just drag sheets in, and once they're in, you can reposition them just by dragging them around. Everything on Tableau is very click and drag. You can change the sizes like so. Maybe if you have a quick filters, those will automatically get added too. If they're not, you can always click on your sheet. If you haven't noticed, lots of clicking on little drop down arrows. That's when you get the thing. You can bring in filters. So you can see I have one here for the DJ that's playing the music. This is data on a local radio station. And you can bring in other things, like I brought in an image here, and I did that by clicking image and bringing it in. I brought some text in here. I did that by clicking text and dragging it in. Everything you just click and drag it in. Then when you're ready to save, this is what it looks like when you're in Tableau Desktop. So in Tableau Desktop, you would save through server, Tableau Public, save to web. If you were just in Tableau Public, it would just be file, save as. And that will make it automatically published in Tableau Public. So we're starting to run out of time here. So if there are any last questions, I can address those now. For more reading, I have on the Tableau for Data Journals and Reddit in my syllabus. I posted some links here for kind of some further reading. So if you want to know more about all the different viz types, I know it didn't cover very many in here. An hour is pretty quick to cover the, unboundless possibilities of viz types you can move to Tableau. This video of the viz types and showing really go over a lot of those different viz types and when the best time to use them for it. And math dimension methods goes into that a little more too. This link, the blue thing confusing, I highly recommend if you're still kind of trying to wrap your head around the difference between a discrete versus a continuous method. That's really good. So research that. And all right. Another question. Can other geographies, we'll just for boundaries, for example, be imported to Tableau? Technically, yes. It's very complicated, which is kind of what I said earlier. So I mentioned earlier a really cool group of people called Tableau Mapping. TableauMapping.vi. So these guys take geographic shape files and turn them into Tableau things. Normally, I would send you a tutorial of how to convert shape files into Tableau. Unfortunately, the tutorial I used to send people all the time is no longer there, and I don't really have any way to send you that right now. But if you want to start a discussion in the Reddit, I can kind of give you some more resources on how to do that and kind of the idea behind that. But that's a pretty advanced thing to do in Tableau. So I really recommend holding off on that until we know a little bit more about data and how it's used in Tableau. Okay, so before I let you go, I'm going to give you some guidelines for your first assignment here. Your first assignment, I'm going to give you some data. I'll give you a couple different data sets. I'm going to post it. I'll post all of this in the Reddit as well. So I'm going to give you some data sets, and I want you to make me a dashboard. So what we had here at the end, when we dragged in multiple sheets, I want you to make me a dashboard of at least 3 different viz types. So maybe a map, maybe a bar chart, maybe a scatter plot. All 3 of them need to be 3 different things, and I want you to have at least 1 quick filter in there, and an example of a use of color, and an example of a use of size. So that's it, pretty free form. I'll provide you some data, or you can use some that you found yourself, and I'll post a little bit more about that in the Reddit. So any last questions before we finish up for today? All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I'll have this recorded and put up on Reddit probably sometime later today. So, all right. Thanks, guys.